Africa's fight for independence is not only in the interests of Africa itself, but in the interests of all humanity.
What if we told you Africa isn't just rising, it's shifting the world's balance of power? While Western leaders still preach about democracy and security, Africa is quietly rewriting the script, with Russia by its side. Over the past few years, Moscow has sealed $4 billion in military deals with 46 African nations. But why is this terrifying the West? Let's find out. You ever noticed how the world pretends to be shocked every time Africa makes a power move? Like, oh wow, Africa's suddenly working with Russia. No, my friend, nothing about this is sudden. These are years of silence, finally turning into sound. See, for decades, Africa was treated like the backstage of global politics, used, ignored, and then blamed. The West sold us security while keeping us dependent. They built bases, signed aid deals, trained our armies, but only as long as we stayed obedient. The moment a leader said, "Let's do it our way," the funding vanished, the headlines changed, and the threats began.
From the times of World War II, and I saw the modern equipment, and we would like to see the cooperation between our countries developing rapidly, developing swiftly, and acquired new shapes and forms.
But something snapped. Burkina Faso said enough. Mali said enough. Niger said enough. And that enough echoed across the whole continent. Africa looked at the mirror and said, "We've got the minerals, the manpower, and the mind. Why are we still begging?" That's when Russia stepped in. Quietly at first, then boldly. Putin didn't come talking about human rights or Western values. He came to talk about a partnership. He came with tanks, training, and tech transfers, not lectures. While Washington and Paris kept writing press statements, Moscow was signing contracts, $4 billion worth of them. 46 African nations are now linked through military-industrial cooperation, deals covering equipment, repairs, training, and homegrown defense systems. This isn't about war. It's about independence. Because every dollar spent here stays in Africa's defense, not in someone else's pocket overseas. The old powers called it dangerous. But what's really dangerous? A continent finally arming itself, or one left forever unarmed and dependent. What's truly radical? Africa choosing self-reliance, or the West refusing to let it? Let's be real. For decades, Africa didn't lack strength. It lacked permission to use it. And now that permission slips are being burned, Western bases dismantled, French replaced by local languages, courtrooms are swapping suits for traditional dress. It's not rebellion, it's restoration. Sahel is writing a new script, and this time, it doesn't need subtitles. You can feel it in every speech, every rally, every handshake between African generals and Russian envoys. It's the look of nations no longer asking, will they approve? It's the sound of a continent saying, watch us do it. But here's the question, why now? Why did Africa finally decide that this was the moment to walk away from Western influence and build its own alliances? You know what's crazy? Africa didn't just wake up one morning and decide, let's ditch the West. No. It was years of watching the same movie, the one where the villain keeps wearing a hero's cape.
One thing that keeps me puzzled, despite having studied finance and economics at the world's best universities, the following question remains unanswered. Why is it that 5,000 units of our currency is worth 1 unit of your currency, where we are the ones with the actual gold reserves?
Think about it. Every time Africa stood up, someone somewhere said, calm down, you need guidance. Guidance from whom? The same people who built the mess in the first place? Let's not pretend colonialism didn't just disappear. It rebranded. It swapped boots for banks, soldiers for sanctions, and sermons for aid. Africa's leaders saw it slowly, painfully. They realized that no matter how much we cooperated, the scoreboard never changed. The rules were made elsewhere. And the referee? Always Western. So when sanctions hit Russia and the West started showing cracks, Africa did the math. If the so-called superpowers are fighting each other, maybe it's time to stop playing their game altogether. That's what makes this moment so powerful. Russia didn't pull Africa into an alliance. Africa walked into it on its own. Because for the first time in decades, Africa had leverage. Energy prices are rising, minerals in demand, population booming. The world needed Africa's resources more than Africa needed their pity. So, when Moscow came offering weapons, training, and tech in exchange for partnership, not control, Africa listened. Now, let's be honest, the West can't handle that. Because if Africa can defend itself, it doesn't need Western peacekeepers. If Africa can trade with BRICS, it doesn't need IMF loans. If Africa can build its own systems, it doesn't need Western approval. And that's the nightmare. An Africa that doesn't owe anybody anything. Burkina Faso's young captain Ibrahim Traoré put it perfectly when he said, "Africa's fight isn't against poverty, it's against dependency." That one word explains everything. Dependency was the invisible leash, one that the West used to control narratives, elections, and even military structures. And now, those leashes are snapping one by one. You see, it's not just about Russia giving Africa weapons. It's about Africa choosing partners who speak the same language of sovereignty. The contracts with Rosoboronexport are more than paper. They're psychological emancipation. $4 billion isn't just money. It's proof that Africa's currency now buys respect. And maybe the most poetic part, the very sanctions that were supposed to isolate Russia ended up liberating Africa. Because while the West cut Russia off, Africa opened the door and in walked opportunity, painted in red, gold, and green. But let's ask you this. If Africa is finding strength through Russia, what exactly is the West losing in return? Let's be honest, it's not about weapons or trade or even diplomacy anymore. What the West is losing right now is control. It's had control for over a century. See, when you control Africa, you control the world's pulse, the minerals, the oil, the gold, the cobalt, the uranium, the roots, the votes. You don't need to own Africa to rule it. You just need to make Africa believe it can't govern itself. And for decades, that worked. The West didn't need to send soldiers. It sent experts. It didn't need to drop bombs. It dropped loans. That's how the game was played, silently, strategically, and with a smile. But here's the plot twist. The same game board, just flipped. France is packing up from Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. US bases are being reviewed. Western ambassadors are losing access faster than journalists can write breaking news. And the media, they're panicking. Every headline now screams Russian influence, as if African sovereignty is a virus. Let's call it what it is, desperation. Because the West built its dominance on the illusion that it was irreplaceable. But Russia just proved it's not. For the first time in modern history, Africa can look west and say, we have options. That's what keeps Washington awake at night. Not Africa's alliances, but Africa's choices. Think about it. Every time the West offered help, it came with footnotes, terms, conditions, and a quiet reminder of who's boss. Russia didn't do that. It said, you want weapons? Here's a deal. You want training? We'll send people. You want tech? Let's transfer it. No lectures, no fine print. And suddenly Africa saw the truth. Partnership isn't supposed to feel like permission. Now, that realization is spreading like wildfire. The West's fear isn't about losing influence in Africa, it's about losing Africa's belief in Western superiority. Because once that illusion breaks, you can't rebuild it. You can't colonize a mind that's already seen its freedom. So what's happening now? Africa's confidence is rising while Western relevance is fading. The same countries once called developing nations are now developing new defense doctrines, new alliances, and new strategies. The balance is tilting, and the old world order doesn't know how to stop it. The Western response? Panic disguised as diplomacy. Suddenly we see new missions, aid packages, security dialogues. But Africans aren't falling for it. Not this time. Because once you realize someone's only kind when you're weak, you stop calling it kindness. And that's the part the West can't stand. Africa's no longer afraid to say no. Not out of anger, but out of clarity. It's the same calm you hear before a storm, when the hunter realizes the prey has just learned how to shoot back. So here's the question. If Africa is now rewriting the rules, how exactly is Russia helping it do that?
Мы рассматриваем Саудовскую Аравию как дружественную.
Russia's President Vladimir Putin has said that his country can offer to help African countries without political conditions, unlike the exploitative West.
Let's pause for a second to say, big thank you to the Black Culture Diary community, where Black voices, stories, and legacies are preserved and amplified. By becoming a member, you're not just supporting the channel, you're becoming part of a powerful cultural movement. Let's continue. Russia isn't handing out favors, it's offering blueprints. And Africa isn't kneeling for help, it's standing for partnership. When Rosoboronexport, Russia's state-owned defense exporter, announced $4 billion in military contracts with 46 African countries, it wasn't just business, it was a rebirth. These contracts include weapons, armored vehicles, anti-tank systems, helicopters, maintenance centers, and, most importantly, training for African soldiers to operate them independently. No foreign advisors needed. In plain terms, Russia is giving Africa the one thing the West never did: knowledge. Instead of keeping Africa a customer, Moscow is turning it into a co-producer. Technological transfers, local assembly plants, shared research, it's all part of the plan. From Nigeria to Uganda, engineers are learning Russian systems. From Congo to Angola, African officers are training alongside Russians, not beneath them. This is how the rules are rewritten. When Africa owns the know-how, it owns the outcome. That's why Western critics are terrified, because an armed, skilled, self-reliant Africa ends dependency. It means no more peacekeeping missions that last forever. It means no more foreign training programs that train everyone except Africans. It means Africa can finally defend its borders, protect its resources, and shape its future. Take the Sahel, for example. Once a corridor of chaos, now transforming into a fortress of unity, Mali replaced French troops with joint Russian training forces. Burkina Faso's young officers now learn cyber defense, drone coordination, and anti-insurgent operations locally. Niger, once a NATO playground, is turning its bases into national command hubs. And the symbolism? Powerful. The flags flying above those bases aren't foreign anymore. Even in the public imagination, the shift is emotional. African youth see Russian-made Tiger and Typhoon vehicles not as tools of war, but as symbols of sovereignty. Because when you can defend yourself, you can finally speak freely. This collaboration is also changing how Africa negotiates globally. Now, when African leaders sit at the table, they're not begging for weapons. They're offering markets. They're not pleading for peacekeepers. They're offering partnerships. The message is simple. We don't want a boss. We want a builder. And that's a message Russia understood faster than anyone else. But that leads us to a deeper question. Why is Russia, of all countries, willing to invest so heavily in Africa's independence when the West never truly did? Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. Have you ever noticed how Russia doesn't talk to Africa like the West does? No, we're here to help. No, follow our system. None of that. It talks like someone who's been through the same storm, and that's because it has. See, Russia understands humiliation. It knows what it feels like to be isolated, sanctioned, and painted as the villain in every Western story. It's been there. So when Africa says, we want to build our own path, Russia gets it on a deeper level. This isn't just politics, it's history meeting history. Back in the Cold War, Moscow supported African liberation movements long before it was fashionable. From Angola to Mozambique, from South Africa to Guinea-Bissau, Russian instructors trained freedom fighters while Western governments backed the very regimes those fighters were resisting. Decades later, the stage has changed, but the script is familiar. Africa is once again saying, we'll stand on our own feet, and Russia is again replying, then let's build your legs stronger. Now, of course, Russia benefits too. Let's not sugarcoat it. By aligning with Africa, Moscow secures trade, minerals, and diplomatic leverage against Western sanctions. But here's the catch. It's a win-win setup, not a master-servant deal. Russia gives weapons, Africa gives resources, Russia gives training, Africa gives trust. Each gains something, but neither bows. And that's what separates this from Western aid: equality. Russia doesn't treat Africa as a crisis. It treats it as a continent with a future Western media calls it manipulation. but Africans call it respect. Because after centuries of being told what to do, Africa's now being asked, what do you want to do? And how can we help you do it? That's partnership. Russia's deeper motive is strategic. If Africa rises, the global balance tilts. A united Africa means new markets, new votes at the UN, new routes that bypass Western control. And if Africa thrives under this new model, a model of self-defense and self-determination, it becomes living proof that the West was never indispensable. That's why Western governments panic every time Putin hosts African leaders in St. Petersburg. They know the photo ops means something deeper, a rewriting of global alliances. It's no longer about who's stronger, it's about who's listening. And right now, Moscow's listening while the West is lecturing. But here's the big question. With Russia and Africa walking hand in hand, where does this road lead? Is this just about weapons and trade? Or is something far bigger being born? This isn't just about guns, contracts, or geopolitics anymore. What's happening right now between Russia and Africa feels like the rebirth of something much bigger. This is the start of Africa's sovereign century. For the first time since colonial maps carved up this continent, Africa is redrawing its own, not with ink and borders, but with alliances and independence. And every signature, every handshake, every deal signed without Western permission is a line of that new map being drawn. You see, the old world order was built on imbalance, the West held the pen and Africa held the paper. But now, the roles have flipped, Africa holds the pen and it's writing its own story. And Russia, it's not leading, it's walking alongside. This isn't a master and servant dynamic, it's partners in defiance. Both have been sanctioned, criticized, and underestimated. Both have learned how to survive without approval. So when they meet, it's not just business, it's recognition. Russia sees in Africa the courage it once needed to face a hostile world. And Africa sees in Russia proof that Western disapproval doesn't decide destiny. Look around, the signs are everywhere. French troops are leaving African soil. Local languages replacing colonial tongues. National armies flying homegrown flags. Mali and Burkina Faso are hosting joint defense drills. Niger is talking about new resource-sharing frameworks with its neighbors. These aren't isolated headlines. They're chapters in one big narrative. Africa is taking control of its future, and the West? It's watching history slip through its fingers. All its tools, propaganda, aid, and sanctions don't work anymore because Africa has seen the trick. When they say humanitarian aid, Africa now reads leverage. When they say partnership, Africa asks, on whose terms? The game is over. The mask is off. Now, here's the beauty. This shift isn't driven by anger, it's driven by clarity. Africa isn't closing its doors, it's choosing who walks through them. It's not rejecting cooperation, it's redefining it. Because real power isn't about isolation, it's about independence, the kind that doesn't need validation. So, where does this road lead? Maybe to a future where Africa isn't treated like the world's charity project, but its backbone. A world where African soldiers defend African borders with African-made weapons, where African students study in universities built by African wealth, not Western loans, where African leaders shake hands with whoever respects them, not whoever owns them. And maybe that's why this alliance matters, because it's not just about Russia helping Africa, it's about Africa reminding the world that it never needed rescuing. So we will leave you with this question. If Africa no longer needs permission to rise, then what's stopping the rest of the world from finally treating it as an equal? Let us know in the comment section. Does West need to wake up now? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about. The Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching. And until the next video, stay tuned.